What if you studied 8 languages each and every day? Which languages would you choose? How would you study them? How would you balance them? What activities would you do? This fall of 2024, I intend to study 8 languages each and every day. Those languages will be Spanish, German, Mandarin, Japanese, Teochew, which is a Chinese language, Korean, Arabic, and Sanskrit, as well as some other languages, but I may not study them each and every day. But I'll get into that in a moment. If you've been following my channel, you know I made a similar video to this at the beginning of the summer, where I said I would study these 8 languages each and every day. So in this video, I'm going to go over what I learned, how that went, and what I'm going to do moving forward based on my experiences studying these 8 languages each and every day for the last 3 months during the summer. So let's just jump right into it with Spanish. I'm still reading Borges' Cuentos Completos. And this is a great book because Borges is such a fantastic author. Magic realism, it doesn't get better than that. The reason why I'm reading this book is because at the Language Academy with Professor Arguez, the Spanish literature class is reading this book. I'm not in the class because it's a bit too early for my taste, but I'm still following along in the hopes that later on the class time will change and then I can rejoin the class. So for German, I stopped reading Die unendliche Geschichte, The Never-Ending Story by Michael Ende. And this is because I wanted to devote more time to speaking. So the way that I practice speaking is I talk to AI. Specifically, I use the website or the service yourteacher.ai. I'm going to link to everything in the description below, so if you want to check it out, check it out. But basically, I spend 15 minutes every day speaking to yourteacher.ai in German. And the best thing about AI is that it corrects your speech every single time. Every time you speak, it corrects your speech and then it moves the conversation forward. So you never run out of things to say, basically. And I remember I did used to use italki tutors, not so much for German, but for Chinese, for example. And I remember the tutors, they would correct my speech maybe the first 2 or 3 times. But after that, they would get tired of correcting my speech and they would just stop correcting it. And although we did have a good conversation, they were able to keep it up. They didn't correct my speech, which was kind of annoying. So the great thing about AI is that it never tires of correcting your speech. It will always correct it. And so I'm able to get a lot of practice in with the grammatical constructions, like moving the verb to the end of the subordinate clause. For example, ich bin hier, weil sie krank ist, and stuff like that. But I realized that even if you speak with AI, you still need to do a lot of reading to build up your vocabulary, because with AI, it will use new words, which you can look up by just hitting the text version of its speech on the screen. You can get the translation that way. But when you're having a conversation, it's not often that you use too many advanced words. I find in the conversations, you tend to speak about the same topics. It's difficult to get more advanced vocabulary and to build out the different themes that you can speak about. So you still need to read, but yourteacher.ai is so great for practicing speaking. So Mandarin, I actually do have conversation partners, and this is because I've moved to the point in Mandarin where my Chinese is pretty good and I want to have real conversations with real people from China. And so I meet with, right now, 2 girls every week for 1 hour each, Wenxi and Simeng. They are students. Well, when she was a student at St. Joe's University, and now she teaches. And Simeng is a grad student at the University of Pennsylvania. So very good people to speak with, very interesting. I like the cultural exchange. I like having a real conversation with a real person because they have a personality. And that's so interesting to me to understand, to see where they're coming from China, and how they live life and their views and perspectives. So that's always great. Additionally, I decided maybe yesterday or the day before that I'm going to begin reading light novels in Chinese, which was something I did a while back, maybe a year or two ago. I think I read the equivalent of 20 books in Chinese in light novels. And I was studying the vocab at the same time through Anki. And this was such a great way to learn like phrases that Chinese people are using today, like common speech and things that you might not necessarily find in a textbook. So if you're interested in light novels, I think the best site is qidian.com, which is QIDIAN.com. Check it out if you want to read a light novel. I recommend you use Migaku, and I'm going to link to that in the description. But Migaku or Link, you can use to study the vocabulary as you read the light novel online. So after that, we have Japanese. Japanese, I have some friends who I correspond with in Japanese. I just write two-page long messages, and we write back and forth. So that gives me some practice, as well as I'm still reading this book, Yume o Kanaeru Zo, which means the elephant that grants dreams or wishes. And this is about Ganesha, who is an Indian god, who probably could very well do that, is grant your dream by clearing out the way in your life so you can move forward. To be honest, I haven't been making much progress in this book because I've been spending the time on other languages, but I'm still studying the vocab through Anki, and I get the vocabulary through the Migaku reader. I use the legacy reader, not the new one. They don't have the new one for the reader yet, but you can import books into Migaku, and then it makes these beautiful flashcards. So next we have Teochew, which is a Chinese language. I'm still studying the flashcards I made from the italki tutors I found who taught me Teochew, but the problem is the italki tutors didn't understand the romanization, basically the pinyin of Teochew, which is called Pengyim. So in pinyin, the rising tone is marked as the number 2, but in Teochew Pengyim, the rising tone is marked as the number 6. So when my tutors taught me, they just thought of the Mandarin pinyin and wrote those numbers. So they would write 2. And now when I look at the flashcards, I don't know if they mean a 2 in terms of the Mandarin pinyin convention, which is a rising tone, or if it's 2 in the Pengyim Teochew, which is actually a falling tone, because 6 is the rising tone in the Teochew system. So I mixed the flashcards together. I have some italki tutor flashcards as well as some flashcards I made myself. And now I don't know which is which. And that's problematic, so I'm gonna have to figure that out. I also lack resources for Teochew, but I was able to make my own resource. I actually made my own book for Teochew, to learn Teochew with Teochew conversations. The manuscript is 100% done. Everything is ready to go, but I just need to wait for my book formatter to format at least 3 other books that I created before he can get to the Teochew book. So if you're interested in Teochew and learning with my book, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to wait a bit. My book formatter is just overworked. So Korean, I haven't been spending too much time on just because I have low motivation. I don't have much use for Korean in my life. I don't really know anyone who speaks Korean. The reason I started Korean originally was because at the Language Academy with Professor Arguez, he had a study with me class where he would go over different languages and would study them, and you could study with him. So he had a class for Korean and the Hanja, which are the Chinese characters called Hanzi in Chinese or Kanji in Japanese. And so I went for the Hanja, the Chinese characters, because I already knew Japanese pretty well and Chinese. And so he would do half Korean, half Hanja. And I got interested in the Korean just by that, because I would hear him speaking Korean, reading Korean, studying Korean week after week after week. And it was just natural for me to begin learning it myself. I started with the Assamil, and this is the French Assamil. I also studied the Korean Assamil from before this generation. But if you can see, the Hangul or the Korean characters are quite large in this book, this version. So in the generation before this, the Korean Assamil, the characters were so tiny and it made it difficult to read. So I'm really happy that this one made the characters so big and you can really understand them. But you know, back in the day, I actually studied Korean when I came back from Japan many, many years ago. This was the first Korean book I got. You can see it's already, the pages are starting to yellow and even turn brown. But this is Teach Yourself Korean. And I studied this. And this was my first book that I used to study Korean. I haven't been checking this out, but now that I'm looking at it, I might just go through it quickly. I'm pretty sure I understand everything in it, but it's always good to review the basics. On top of that, I also went and I found a copy of Professor Arguez's Korean textbook, which is a historical, literary, and cultural approach to the Korean language. This is such an interesting book because he actually introduces Hanja in the conversations from the beginning. So if you can see, he has Hanja here, as well as the Hangul, the Korean characters. But this is such a great book to go over the grammar. Yeah, you can see he's teaching the Hanja, the stroke order. But this is a really good textbook. Also very interesting pictures, I might add. But I went through this already, and it's too bad he didn't make further volumes of this series. But this is a great introduction if you can find it, if you can get your hands on it. So Arabic. Arabic, we finished the Assamil, the newest generation Assamil. This is from 2006. It's the French version. We went through it. I think we actually didn't go through the last 3 or 4 lessons. But yeah, it's a good book. You can see the Arabic on one side and the Romanization and everything, the French on the other side. So this was great. Before we went through this Assamil, we went through the 1975 Assamil, which is very interesting because they didn't actually type out the Arabic. For some reason, they got a guy to handwrite the Arabic. Look at this. This guy had to handwrite everything in the book. I mean, at the end of the lessons, you can see his handwriting starting to get a little bit sloppy. So it's so interesting, though. I think this is good, though, because you get to see what actual handwritten Arabic looks like. You know, most times when you have a book, it's typed out. You don't know what the handwritten version of the characters looks like. So we finished the Assamils, and now we're reading children's stories. We started with one story, which was, I think it's called Jamil and Layla, or Layla and Jamil. Now we're reading Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves from the 1001 Nights. And that's such a great story. I'm also reading children's stories outside of the class that I found in order to improve my vocabulary. And I put the stories in LingQ.com. I'm going to link to all this stuff in the description, so check it out. And I just study the vocab in LingQ, and then I export it to Anki and then I study the vocab through the flashcards that way. And I'm spending about an hour every day reviewing the flashcards up for review in Anki, learning new words that I've mined already from the stories. And if there are no new words to mine, then I'm reading children's stories through LingQ and creating new, finding new vocabulary to put into Anki. So Sanskrit. We are still working on the Sanskrit language by Walter Maurer, I guess his name is, and you can see we have the Devanagari, quite nice. I think we're on chapter 15 now. Let me see. Yeah, the story of Shakuntala, very famous story, and we're covering this in class right now. This is a great book, very, very comprehensive, lots of notes, lots of grammar like this. So this is a great book. Before we started working on this though, we went through Teach Yourself Sanskrit. And right now I'm still reviewing all of the sentences from each chapter that we went over, which I put into Anki actually. So you can see they have this Devanagari at the top. I put all this into Anki. I actually paid a guy in Nepal to transcribe the Devanagari into the computer so I can make flashcards with Anki. But now the way I get the Devanagari into the computer is I use Google Lens. It's an app. And that's pretty good at picking up the characters and putting it into the computer. So I recommend that. The other thing about the Sanskrit class is that we've also been practicing reading aloud, because a lot of the stories in this book are just lend themselves to reading them aloud as a story. So we're practicing our intonation, we're practicing emphasis and the way that we tell stories. And so that's a lot of fun, not only to be able to tell a story, practice that, but also to be able to speak Sanskrit, because Sanskrit, if you don't know, is the old language of India. It's like the Latin of India. No one speaks it anymore, but it evolved into languages like Hindi, Bengali, Punjabi, Marathi, Gujarati, Urdu, all these languages. But Sanskrit is like Latin, so no one really speaks it as their native tongue. So it's kind of cool to be able to speak Sanskrit in class. So those are the 8 languages that I study each and every day. However, there are some other languages which I do study from time to time. And so the first set of languages are Swedish, Norwegian, and Danish. This is my book, by the way. If you want to learn Swedish, Norwegian, and Danish, definitely pick this up. I'll link it in the description below. But you can see I made it easy. I made it side by side so you can see exactly how they're the same and different. But when I wrote this book, I definitely picked up a lot of Swedish, Norwegian, and Danish. However, I don't have any speaking practice with these languages because, hey, I was writing the book, I was studying it, I was learning it to make a written form of the language, so I need to practice speaking. So what I'm doing is I'm drilling various sentences in the languages that I want to be able to say, and I made Anki flashcards for all of them. This is a great book, though, if you want to, if you just want to compare and learn the history of these languages. I have like a historical section in the front, and I just have a section in the back that compares Swedish, Norwegian, Danish, and Icelandic and Faroese. So it's very cool. If you love languages and you love comparing them, definitely pick up this book. You know, hopefully I'm going to do this same process for a lot of other languages, because I want to be able to say the basics in a lot of languages, even if I don't speak them fluently. I want to be able to say something in the languages, right? So I kind of want to be like Xiaoma. The way Xiaoma works is, if you don't know who Xiaoma is, He has 6 million subscribers on YouTube, and basically what he does is he studies the language for the night before he goes out during the day, and then he films himself interacting with native speakers. And what he does is he basically learns like 50 to 100 phrases in the language that he knows he's going to use, and then he can actually have a conversation with a native speaker. So I'm not Shama, but I do want to do something similar. I want to know the basics so that I can at least say something in the language. And hopefully I can do that for a lot of different languages like Vietnamese, Thai, Polish, Slavic languages, etc. Next, we have the Romance languages. I'm really looking forward to studying French and Italian. I got some books that you might want to check out if you're studying Romance languages. The first is Eurocomrom, The Seven Sieves. So this book basically teaches Spanish, Portuguese, Italian, French, Romanian, and Catalan. So you can see it's comparing the vocabulary. They also have a lot of like grammatical stuff. The other cool thing about this book is they have, let me see if I can find it. They have real examples of like newspaper articles, including like horoscopes, like astrology. So you can see this from actual newspapers in the languages. And it's very rare for a Romance language family book to include Romanian, because Romanian is so different from the other Romance languages. It still has a case system for the nouns. It has the neuter gender in addition to the masculine and feminine gender. But this book, it covers Romanian. It does a great job. They also have The Little Prince, excerpt from The Little Prince. So this is a great book if you want to learn the Romance language family. Another great book I picked up was this, Eurom 5. This basically has Spanish, Portuguese, Italian, French, and Catalan, but no Romanian. But the way this is laid out is they have newspaper articles for each of the 5 languages. And then you can see here, they have the vocabulary that you need to learn, and they translate it into all of the other languages so that you can kind of figure out what the word means just by looking at the other languages. For example, if you are strong in French, but you want to learn Catalan and Spanish, then you can just look at the French column and be able to figure out what the meaning of the Catalan is. So it's unfortunate they don't have Romanian. I will say that I haven't announced this yet, but I've written a book that is a comparative grammar of the Romance languages, just like this book for the Scandinavian languages. So I'm going to be coming out with the Romance language version, and that's going to include Romanian. It's going to be Spanish, Portuguese, French, Italian, Romanian, and Catalan. But it's going to come after my Germanic book, which is being formatted now, so you'll have to wait a bit. But yeah, definitely look forward to that. I'm very excited to get that out for all of you. You'll be able to check it out. So yeah, those are my plans. This is what I did over the last 3 months during the summer. I'm going to continue where I left off for the summer and keep moving forward into the fall. I'm going to be studying 8 languages each and every day. And I told you about some of the activities. If you want to join me and have your own language challenge for the fall, I highly recommend it. I'll be putting out videos throughout the fall that will help you in terms of your language studies. So be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Okay, I hope this video was entertaining, if not informative. So thank you so much, and we'll talk again soon.